Chris has hit the button to go live. In our hands are cups of all types, 'cause it's time for a history stream. Here we are in VTH land. History nerds are gathered on demand. Hit the like and join if you can, 'cause it's time for a history stream. And if you're here to play the VTH drinking game, then you're probably not okay by the end of the history stream. You could be in America or France, Australia, Sweden, India, or Japan. We're a community of all lands, here to watch a history stream. And if you're here to play the VTH drinking game, then you're probably not okay by the end of the history stream. Here we are in VTH land. History nerds are gathered on demand. Hit the like and join if you can, 'cause it's time for a history stream. Here we are in VTH land. History nerds are gathered on demand. Hit the like and join if you can, 'cause it's time for a history stream.
What's going on, everybody? Anything going on in the world right now? Seems like a slow news day, like my friend JD said. Let's dive into this. It's been a little while since we've done a live stream. It is really warm here in Ohio right now. I know not just Ohio, but it's supposed to be 95 Fahrenheit here today, and it's supposed to be that hot for like the next 4 or 5 days in a row. So I'm upstairs where my old 100-year-old house does not cool very well. So I think it's about 80 in my office. And that's with 2 window air conditioners running in other rooms. I can't run one in this room, or that's all you'll hear. But I've been starring some of your questions that have been asked before this even started. So I'll try to get to some of those, and we'll just do the best we can with getting to everything. Somebody did mention that I didn't do a recap stream of my recent trip to Europe, which is absolutely right. Not sure we'll get to that today. We'll probably do a separate stream for that, but I do plan to try and stream a couple times this week. I'm finally home with no travel. Right now, my next trip on the schedule is the first week of September. I am trying to figure out when I'm going to do a Shiloh battlefield tour. Still working on figuring out dates for that. It's hard with my son's soccer schedule, but I'm working on it. So, all right. So let's go ahead and get to some of the ones that I've already starred, and then we'll just kind of go with it, and we'll see where the stream takes us. As advertised, this is an Ask Me Anything stream. It does not have to be about history. It can be about personal stuff. It can be about current events. We'll definitely talk about what's going on in the Middle East right now. We can talk about sports. We can talk about movies. You can ask me about my personal life. You can ask me about stuff to do with faith and religion if you want to. And there we go. So what do you think about the movie Glory? Well, it's my favorite Civil War movie and one of my favorite movies of all time. Absolutely love Glory. Love the story. Love the acting and the writing. Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman. I thought that the casting was really well done, especially with Robert Gould Shaw. I think he was perfectly cast with a guy who also was playing Ferris Bueller right around the same time. So that's pretty cool. All right, so I've got like 12 that are already started. So I apologize in advance if I miss yours. There's a lot of questions going on. How do you typically view and study very morally gray and complex figures or events in history? For instance, I've been researching Napoleon lately and genuinely don't know what to think of the man. I think that's exactly how you would approach it, is to understand that the vast majority of historical figures are morally gray, especially when seen in the light of our present day morality. It's okay to not view them as all one thing or all the other. Napoleon was not an evil man. He was also not a hero. He's somewhere in between, and that's true for most people. There, you can simultaneously recognize what he was good at and what he accomplished by also saying, you know what, there are also some pretty awful things about him and his character and about his actions. Both can be true at the same time, and that's true for most figures, I think. Any tips for college history students? Have a plan for what you're going to do after. I mean, there's not exactly a ton of options as far as using a history degree. Working in a museum, teaching, research, not a lot of other options, really. I mean, a lot of people get history degrees, end up going into something completely unrelated to history. So just have a plan, know what you want to do, and have something you're passionate about, and then pursue it. Battle of Chattanooga. Why was Braxton? You answer the question in the first line there. Why was Braxton Bragg? That's all you need to know, really. Braxton Bragg, not one of the best generals for the Confederates, largely hated by his own men, and not always the smartest guy when it comes to strategy. I mean, he had a few moments that were decent during the war, but yeah. For those who are asking, the military crest is like, if you're defending a hill, you don't stand on top of the hill. You stand part way down the face of the hill. Like if you go to Little Round Top at Gettysburg, the Union line was not on top of Little Round Top. It was down a little ways. That's why you see all the monuments and markers and stuff down about a third to a half of the way down the hill. There's a lot of reasons for that, but that's what's called the military crest. It's different than being on the very top. You know, it's been a long time since I've played Clash Royale, unfortunately. So I appreciate you trying to lighten the mood, but I couldn't tell you right now because I think it's probably been months or maybe even years since I played. How's the season's first heat wave treating you? I'm used to the heat. We get this every summer for at least a few days, and here I am wearing long sleeves. I have them rolled up, but and I was just in Arizona a few weeks ago, and it was already this hot there. So, and I'm drinking my Izzy sparkling apple, which I love. Yeah, so Eldon, I'll get on that for sure. It probably won't be today though. How am I doing today? And thank you for that, American Nerd. I'm actually doing really well. I'm having a good day. My son was supposed to be playing a soccer tournament today, and it got rescheduled because the fields were in bad shape because we've had just an absurd amount of rain the last couple of weeks here. Am I a Napoleon Bonaparte fan? Well, referring to my earlier comments, I view him more positively, I think, than most people do, but not perfect and certainly capable of being a pretty terrible guy at times. But I don't view him the way some people do, which is like on the level of a Hitler or a Stalin. He's nothing like that. Napoleon Bonaparte had a lot of things he did that were very beneficial to Europe. And I don't blame him for a lot of the things that he ended up, like, you know, everybody says, oh, he's got these millions of deaths laid at his feet. Most of those wars of the coalitions were not started by France or Napoleon. They were started in response to Napoleon. Now, the last couple of years especially, Napoleon had a lot of chances to negotiate and kind of put an end to things that didn't. But I'd say I'm more of a fan of him than not. Let's put it that way. Was Andrew Johnson or Woodrow Wilson the worst president of all time? Andrew Johnson. Woodrow Wilson's the one I hate the most, and I make a lot of the fact that I hate Woodrow Wilson. But but no, Andrew Johnson, I think, did the most damage to the country as president. So, hello, TYZJ. Thank you for that. Hello. Thanks. I did that song a while back with AI. AI music's gotten a lot better since then, actually. Okay. Swedish polymath. Do you know who Eugene Showman is? Him killing Nikolai Bobrikov is a forgotten event in the lead up to the First World War. Same can be said. So I'm familiar with the death of King Alexander. I'm not familiar with Eugene Showman or that killing. That's something I'll have to look into more. Swedish polymath. Matt, thank you for putting me onto that, actually. You're going to continue extra histories or epic histories, American Revolution series. Yes, I will. The main thing is they were releasing those videos around the anniversaries of events, and of course I don't want to step on their release by immediately reacting to it, so I will get to some of those down the road a little ways. And it looks like, yeah, somebody else, Daniel, asked me the same thing. So yes. Michelle, how did I get into Rachel's challenge? That's a great question. So I've shared some of this before, but I know a lot of people are new. So first of all, when the Columbine shooting happened in April of 1999, I was a youth pastor. And so I knew that my students were going to want to talk about this event that had unfolded. And so I paid very close attention to what was happening. I remember that day vividly. April 20th, 1999. It's one of those events I will never forget. My girlfriend at the time actually called me and told me about it. And that's how I first found out. And I put it on the news. And a couple days after all these events unfolded, these stories started coming out about some of the students who had been killed. And I ended up watching the funeral of the very first student who was killed, who was Rachel Joy Scott. And I heard these stories that were shared by these people, young adults, students, adults alike. And I was blown away. I was 21 years old at the time, and I was so impressed by the things I was hearing about this 17-year-old girl that I thought, wow, there's something special about her, and I wanted to know more. And so her mom and dad wrote a book called Rachel's Tears that shared a lot of the story of her life, shared a lot of very difficult to explain what I would say are supernatural things connected to her life and her death. And I just was so amazed by her story that I just started writing music. And so I wrote a song. It was called Martyr's Song. And it was about, each verse told a different story. And the third verse of the story told the story of, the third verse of the song told the story of Rachel Scott. And about that time I had started dating my future wife. And somewhere along the way, we had a conversation where I told her, I said, listen, this is really important to me. If I ever get married, if I ever have children, it's really important to me that I name a daughter Rachel Joy after this incredible young woman who I never met. And I shared the story with her. And we ended up, when our daughter was born, our firstborn, who will be 20 in about 10 days, which is nuts to me, we named her Rachel Joy. A couple of years after my daughter was born, actually right about the time my daughter was born, I know I'm taking a long time with this story, but right about the time my daughter was born, I knew Rachel's Challenge was this organization that shared Rachel Scott's story in schools as a way of inspiring kindness and compassion among students. And so I contacted Rachel's Challenge, sent them a couple of baby pictures of my daughter, told them we had named our daughter after her, got a very nice, very gracious email back from Rachel Scott's dad, Daryl. And that was kind of the end of the story. And in the email, he said, hey, every year on her birthday, send me some pictures of her. Tell me a little bit about your daughter. He was very nice. And I'd never talked to him again after that. And fast forward a few years, I was doing music. I was playing in churches and cafes and wineries and all these different venues. And I was looking for something to supplement my income. And so I applied to be a presenter for Rachel's Challenge. And you go through this whole elaborate audition process where you have to make a video of yourself doing part of the presentation, and then you make another video where you talk about why you want to be a part of this. And that led to me being one of 10 finalists for 3 new presenters that they were going to hire that year. And so then I had to do a presentation live on Skype with Rachel's family and with members of the organization, and super nervous. Got through that, and then they interviewed me. And about a month later, I found out that I had been hired as one of the presenters. And when I showed up out in Colorado, in Littleton, Colorado, to do training that summer, Rachel's dad, Daryl, got up to do kind of a background of the organization and gave the history of Rachel's Challenge. And he said, and we know of something like 15 or 20 young women around the country that have been named after Rachel Scott. And here's one of them. And he pulls up these baby pictures of my daughter that I had sent him 7 years earlier, or 9 years earlier when she was born, and just blew me away that he still had those photos because I had forgotten I'd sent them. So that's how I became a part of Rachel's Challenge. I've been a part of it ever since. Last year and this year, I haven't spoken just because with everything going on in my personal life, combined with how busy I've been with stuff related to history, I've taken a step back from Rachel's Challenge. But at some point, I do hope to return and continue doing speaking engagements for them. In the meantime, the Scott family are dear friends. They're family to me. Rachel's dad, Daryl, her stepmom, Sandy, who is just the sweetest person I've ever met in my life. Her sisters, Dana and Bethany, and her brothers, Craig and Mike, are some of my dearest friends and some of the most beautiful human beings I've ever known in my life. So it's been a privilege, and I've gotten to speak in like 40 states for Rachel's Challenge over the years, including all the way out in Bethel, Alaska. Anyway, sorry about that. I get very passionate when talking about that. In your opinion what is your opinion on Ted Cruz and many other Christians using Genesis 12:3 to support whatever the Israel or the Israeli government does? I think it's important to separate Jewish people from the state of Israel. I recognize that the state of Israel is a strong ally of the United States, but as Christians, or at least me personally as a Christian, there's a difference between the government of a country and the people. And that's true in a lot of different ways. But so I don't agree with them on that. No. Kaiserreich for Hearts of Iron 4 updated to 1.5, reworking the American lore and content. Interesting. I love Kaiserreich's one of my favorite mods. I'll have to check that one out. Been talking on the Discord server about wanting to do another like multiplayer that we record and upload to the gaming channel. Hey, Professor, what's in the chat? Good to see. I'm just catching up on some of the comments here. There's a lot that I just in the super chats I got to do, so I'll get through those as fast as I can. Am I going to play Campaign Trail again? Yes, I will. Some great mods out like Peace with Honor. I haven't seen that one yet, but yeah, I'm definitely going to play more Campaign Trail for sure. American Nerd, not trying to be political, wanted to say I hope and pray what happened last night won't escalate. I agree 100%. Yeah, we're going to talk. Well, let's talk some about Iran. Just as I have said when it comes to Israel and Gaza, is that my hope above all else is peace and that people don't need to die. And that's true for Iranian scientists, and that's true for members of the U.S. Air Force, and that's true for Israeli civilians. That's true for civilians in Gaza. I just don't want innocent people to die. And my prayer and my hope above all is peace for everybody concerned. And beyond that, I hope it does not escalate. I hope that something can be worked out that doesn't involve people continuing to drop bombs and fire missiles at each other. Because there are a lot of, and speaking of Rachel's Challenge, one of my fellow presenters with Rachel's Challenge, Ali, is Iranian. He was born in Iran. Wonderful guy. And he's the only person of Iranian descent that I know. But I guarantee there are a whole lot more people like him who, just like a lot of Americans and a lot of Israelis and a lot of Palestinians, just want the fighting to end. So that's what I'm hoping for. What's the schedule like for those epic history videos? I don't know. Honestly, from one day to the next, I never know exactly what I'm going to do. There are some days I sit here for 2 hours wondering exactly what I'm going to do a reaction to. And I don't watch the videos in advance. And I'm mindful of a couple of things. When I'm choosing what I'm going to do a reaction to, number one is I'm trying to think, what would the audience want to see? but also I'm mindful of not wanting to fatigue people on a lot of the same topic all the time. If it were up to me, I'd probably always do presidents, World War I, and the Civil War, and probably not much else, because that's what I'm most comfortable with. It's what I'm most knowledgeable about. And honestly, those videos perform better than most. But I also don't want to wear people out on the same topics. I can only talk about the Battle of Gettysburg so many different ways, you know. So, so all of that it goes into me deciding what I do. Will I react to Mr. Beat's presidential election series? Yeah, I'll do some at some point. Hey, fun fact. And we talked about this a little bit, Matt and I, Mr. Beat, because we did a live stream together last week. He's coming to Ohio in August, and we're going to be doing some stuff together here in Ohio. So I'm pretty excited about that. What is the most overrated event in U.S. history? That's a great question. I'd be curious to see what people say in the chat about that. I'm watching the live chat. Overrated event in American history. Let me think about that a little bit. I'll look for some answers that people give in the chat and then tell you which one I think is the best. Watergate. Yeah, Watergate's an interesting one. I think I could probably agree with that. Genie Vlogger. Hey, you're going to be in Ohio in August also. Very cool. We should connect while you're here if you're going to be in the same part of Ohio as me. The Trent affair. I don't know, Peter. That could have been bad. I don't agree that World War I was an overrated event, because I think that had massive implications for the future of the United States. I wouldn't really call sinking of the Titanic a U.S. history event, though there were certainly Americans on it, and it was on the way here. Yeah, there's some good answers, though. XYZ affair. Yeah, that's probably a decent one. Salem witch trials, interesting. Have I heard of Dragon Man's Military Museum? I have not. I've been to the Springs, Colorado Springs, but it was a long time ago. I'll have to check that out next time I'm out there. Have I not reacted to Voices of the Past? I thought I had. Now I'm going to have to check and see. I know I'm subscribed to Voices of the Past. I've got like 1,400 videos, so I have to sometimes check and see. There have been times I have. No, I guess I haven't, unless this one was. That was an old video. I don't know if that was Voices of the Past or not. You may be right then about that. I'll have to take a look, because I know I'm subscribed to them. I'm aware of the channel. Watching Glory with my Army sister, she commented the officers might have happily accepted the 54th's offer because they were black men. Thoughts? To my knowledge, that's actually a bit of Hollywood drama in the movie. I don't know. I'm not aware of any factual basis for the idea that Robert Gould Shaw volunteered the 54th Massachusetts for that job in leading the attack. I could be wrong about that, but I'm fairly certain that was added for a little Hollywood drama. Honestly, more often than not, when it came to black troops, the Union military leadership was hesitant to put them in situations like that for fear of, if they failed, how it would hurt the cause. That's certainly what happened at the crater at Petersburg. At the last minute, the division that included black troops who had been specially trained for the attack on the crater were pulled and replaced with a very poorly led division that botched the attack, because there was fear that it would be bad press if a black division got slaughtered in a failed attack on the crater. So I feel like that was more often than not the mindset with black troops. Jerry Smooth says, most people in the comments could have been done better than James Ledley. Absolutely. He was the commander of that attack, and he was awful. Whenever Chris talks about his understandable hatred of Woodrow Wilson, I like to imagine him as Captain Kirk in The Wrath of Khan going, Wilson! That's more my friend Cipher from Cynical Historian, that's more his thing, but I'll allow it. So this one's not on the screen. I'll read this in a second, but I'm just looking at the live chat in addition to doing the super chats. Somebody asked, Robert Lane asked, what did Grant get up to between his victory at Vicksburg and taking over command in the East? Yeah, he actually got up to a really, really important fight at Chattanooga. So after the Battle of Chickamauga, George Thomas is placed in command of the Army of the Cumberland. They reform in Chattanooga. There's a couple of Union armies there, and Braxton Bragg's men come and lay siege to Chattanooga, and Grant is sent east to eastern Tennessee to Chattanooga to deal with that. And so you have Missionary Ridge, Lookout Mountain, and honestly, that he's kind of brought in, the way they describe it in the History Channel documentary is that he's brought in as a fixer, and he comes in and he leads these armies. They win at Missionary Ridge and Chattanooga, Lookout Mountain. And that's Grant's kind of last hurrah before he's brought east to take command of all the armies. Ronaldo or Messi? Definitely Messi. Okay. Oh, yeah. So I'm curious about your view on the Aryan Trinity, where God the Son is created by Father before time. No, that's completely contrary to the Bible. In the beginning was the Word. The Word, capital W, meaning its logos is Jesus being the living Word of God. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. By him, all things were created, and without him, nothing was created that was created. The Gospel of John is crystal clear that Jesus was present at creation and was not created. So people can have that viewpoint if they want, but it's not a biblical viewpoint. Cowens, I don't know who's the better band, the Cramps, Guided by Voices, or Devo. I'm not familiar with the first two, but Devo, being from Northeast Ohio, I'm going to have to go with them. I think they formed at Kent State University, which is like a half hour away from me. Talked about turning points in the war. You put Vicksburg and Chattanooga together as the main turning points. You could see it being Sharpsburg and Vicksburg. Of those two options, I'll go with Sharpsburg and Vicksburg, or Antietam and Vicksburg, just because Antietam leads to the Emancipation Proclamation, which is a turning point in the nature of the war and guarantees that there will be no European involvement. But yes, Vicksburg, absolutely a turning point. Yeah, I would go with Antietam and Vicksburg if I was to take one of your two options that you've given me there. I watch your videos from time to time and decided to make a small donation. Ron, it absolutely does. I really appreciate that, especially right now. There's a lot going on in the world, and every little bit that we can do to stay together and support one another goes a long way. Thank you, American Nerd. I'll pass that on to Rachel. Yeah, she'll be 20 in July, on July 3rd. That's nuts to me. I do not feel like I should have a 20-year-old daughter. And yet at the same time, I realized that when my grandmother was my age, she had a grandson who was already a teenager. So me having a 20-year-old daughter shouldn't feel that big a deal. Yeah. Hey, Mr. Axel Rose, thank you for becoming a member. Will I ever do a video on Gomez Enes de Zuara? I'm not familiar with who that is. But I definitely would be interested in checking that out. And yeah, somebody asked about me talking about current events. Yeah, I do. I am starting to talk more and more about current events. And JD asked thoughts on the proposal in the Senate spending bill to sell off public ground. I know how you feel about it, JD. I know you're very strongly opposed to it. I'll confess, number one, I haven't spent a ton of time looking at the bill specifically. I don't know specifically what land is being sold. I know that a lot of the states out west, especially like places like Nevada and Arizona, that majorities of those states are public ground. I know Nevada, that's the case. Like most of Nevada is public ground. So on one hand, I don't have a huge problem with selling off small pieces of it that don't otherwise have a lot of purpose. But I also recognize where you're coming from, that protecting ground, especially for national parks and stuff, super important. And I love some of the beautiful public grounds that we have out west, especially. And I definitely want us to keep it that way. And I also agree with you, JD, that I would love to see us, if we're going to sell some of that public ground, take some of those proceeds. I mean, obviously pay off the debt, but I'd also like to see us revitalize some of our cities. A lot of our cities, especially in where I live in what we call the Rust Belt, we've got huge swaths of these cities that are just run down and no longer lived in. Like, I live in a city, Youngstown, Ohio, that 100 years ago had twice as many people as it does today. 100 years ago, Youngstown, Ohio was larger than Nashville, Tennessee, had 130,000 people. Now it's got like half that, 60, 65,000. So there's a lot of areas of Youngstown that are just run down, and I would love to see that repurposed. And we already have a very beautiful public park in Youngstown, Mill Creek Park. So I'm not 100% opposed to selling off small parts of public land, but it depends on how and why it's done. And I certainly don't want to see us selling off any of the stuff that's preserved for hunting and for parks and things of that nature. And so like I said, I don't know enough about the bill to know what specifically they're talking about selling. Yeah, and I don't want to see it being sold to big companies just so they can make a killing on it. I'm opposed to that. Old Britannia just released an excellent video about the causes of World War I. Interesting, very cool. I know we just did a video, and I think there's a second one now for Things I Care About. Just did another video about the causes of World War I that we'll take a look at too, since I did the first one. Let's see. Do I think that the modern Democratic Party's alignment and characteristics came from Theodore Roosevelt? No. I think the modern Democratic Party, just as the modern Republican Party, both just kind of evolved and will continue to evolve for a number of reasons. Theodore Roosevelt came about at a time when pretty much both parties were in the middle of the progressive movement and were changing significantly. I think Theodore Roosevelt is one of those people that both sides like to claim. Seems like most Democrats and most Republicans like Theodore Roosevelt. That's not always the case with a lot of presidents. Am I looking forward to Ken Burns' documentary on the Revolutionary? Yes, big time. I've had the opportunity to meet Ken Burns a few times over the last couple of years and heard him talk personally a lot about that. I even got to interview him last year. I never did upload that interview. I guess I should. Favorite docs by him, The Roosevelt's fantastic. The one about baseball was really good. I haven't seen all of them. Of course, the Civil War. One of the reasons I got into Civil War history was Ken Burns' documentary. So absolutely love that one too. Garrett, thank you for that. Emperor Emerald, thank you. As an American, the past couple years have been interesting, especially in Majid's mostly anti-IL. I don't know what IL is supposed to mean there. And mixed on IR, my Majid is divided on Iran, us. I guess I don't fully understand everything you're talking about there. I apologize for that. Sunni and Shia, even heretics pray together. Sunni and Shia being the two main branches of Islam. He's using emojis because the emojis aren't showing up for me. Israel and Iran. Okay, yeah. I think it's all complicated, right? I mean, anytime we talk about a nation, we're talking about that nation's government. You know, Russia invading Ukraine is not representative of the people of Russia. It's representative of the people in power in Russia. The choices being made by Iran and their government don't represent all of the people in Iran. The people in Israel, same thing. The people of Gaza are not all represented by Hamas. I mean, it's complicated. And we should never think that one small group of people represent an entire group of people. Just as even though Donald Trump won the election, that doesn't mean that all Americans think the way Donald Trump does, or even that all conservative Americans think the way Donald Trump does. We're all our each unique individual with our own beliefs about things. Have I ever done anything on composers? Not really, but that's actually an interesting topic that maybe we could dive into at some point. Jesse, thank you for that. Hello from Northwest Ohio. Never done a super chat. Wow. I thank you for letting me be your first. I appreciate that. As an officer, your channel has been a blessing on nights when things get rough. Wow, Jesse, stay safe out there, and thank you for what you do. Just like with a lot of other things, unfortunately, all too often in the news, police officers are in the news for one of two reasons: because they got killed in the line of duty, or because of a bad officer who made a bad choice, or because of officers who got caught up in very challenging circumstances and get blamed for something when they were just doing their jobs. So thank you for the vast majority of police officers who are just out there doing their best every night. Be safe. What football club do I support? A couple. West Bromwich Albion is my main club. I also support Rangers in Scotland. I like following Wrexham, but now they're in the same league as West Brom. So when they play West Brom, I have to cheer for West Brom. And then here in the US, Columbus Crew. Have I seen Fat Electrician's vid on Operation Praying Mantis? I have not. I don't watch videos I might potentially react to. Two problems. I get asked to do Fat Electrician stuff all the time. And there's two main reasons I don't do more of his videos. Number one, they're really long. And because my reactions tend to be at least twice as long as the original video, if he has a 45-minute video, that's an hour and a half long reaction. So I tend to shy away from videos that are that long unless I'm going to break them up into two parts. The other thing is that unless it's a topic that Fat Electrician is covering that I know really well, I won't do it. And please take this in the spirit in which it's meant. He gets a lot of facts wrong in his videos. And I've talked to him about that personally, and he acknowledges that. He says, listen, I'm a storyteller first and a historian second. So yes, sometimes in the heat of the moment, in the midst of telling a story, he does get some facts wrong. And my issue with that is it's fine if that's the case and people understand that. The problem is for myself as a historian, if I'm reviewing his video and there are things that I don't know well enough to catch and fact check, then I feel like I'm endorsing what's being said because I'm not correcting it, and I don't want to do that. So I've shied away from his videos unless it's a topic I know really well for those reasons. So that doesn't mean I'm saying in any way that you shouldn't watch him. And he's obviously quite successful. He's got over million subscribers, and I think he's done a lot of great and good things for the history world of YouTube. It's just for me personally. Okay, where are we at? Have I ever done any research into the life of Smedley Butler and the business plot specifically? I have not, except in the standpoint of looking at him in his involvement in World War I. And I'm doing some research right now for my upcoming trip to the Western Front in September. He just did a video. Rex Pizza says Fat Electrician made a video on Alvin York. See, that's one I could definitely do. That's a topic I know really well. So, but yeah, I'll be talking about Smedley Butler in some of my upcoming World War I videos. Am I planning on running for political office? No. I did get elected to school board many years ago in Pennsylvania, but that's about the extent of my ambition. The museum is only open on weekends during the summer. Okay, got it. Let's see. Have you ever gotten into the lore and history of Middle Earth or Star Wars lore? Middle Earth, yes. Star Wars, not as much. Not that I'm not a huge fan of Star Wars. I am. And holy cow, we have 1,000 people in here. This is awesome. And I'm actually going to take this shirt off because it's really, really warm upstairs right now. It's probably 85 degrees in my room. Yeah, so I've gone into some of the Middle Earth lore, but not Star Wars so much. American who lives in Canada, moved here in response to the Democratic backsliding in the U.S. Love my new home, found my people here. Hoping you do more of Canadian history. Yeah, Canadian history is amazing, especially when they get into war. They're nuts, and I love it. And there will be some more Canadian history for sure. New member, thank you so much for that, Medicon. Francisco, I'm doing both, answering questions in the live chat, but also the super chats at the same time as best I can. Yeah, I'll do some Yugoslav history at some point. Let's see where we're at. Daniel Wilson, always the ones in power who start the wars for their pride, greed, and vanity. I understand why people feel that way, but I honestly do think that there are times when wars happen because people think they're doing the right thing, and it's not necessarily pride, greed, and vanity. Sometimes it's the pride of people on the opposite side that get us into wars. But I understand what you're saying completely. Simo, I've been arguing with my friend to this entire day, so maybe you can settle it. Who was worse, Nazi Germany or Imperial Japan? That's a weird argument to make. I feel like that's kind of like arguing, would you rather have your right arm cut off or your left arm cut off? I would just leave it at they were both awful. I'm not sure that I would say one was more awful than the other. They were both awful, as was Stalin during that time. Gabriel, you asked about the final that Mr. Terry's doing. Yeah, it's going to be between me and JD, the History Underground. And he did text us about that the other day, but I haven't heard anything about a date yet. It is still happening. Four Roses, thank you for that. Gaslight Studios, thank you. Thoughts on Baathism, both as a political theory and as implemented government model in the Arab world. I only know a limited amount about that in terms of Saddam Hussein's involvement. It is very interesting to see how they used that to be able to have basically what was minority rule, right? I mean, my understanding is that they were of the opposite Muslim background as the people that they ruled. I don't fully understand Shia and Sunni. I know it has to do with successors of the Prophet Muhammad, and beyond that, I don't know a lot. But honestly, don't know a ton about Saddam Hussein's story and the story of the Ba'ath Party to be able to answer that effectively. I'm sure other people who are in the chat could do that. In your opinion, which Civil War song were great? My personal favorites are Battle Hymn. Yeah, Battle Hymn of the Republic and Battle Cry of Freedom are my two personal favorites. As a Union guy, especially on the Confederate side, Bonnie Blue Flag's a great song. I enjoy that one. When Johnny Comes Marching Home is a good one. I'd say those are probably the two on either side that I enjoy the most. But yeah, Battle Hymn of the Republic, Battle Cry of Freedom, far and away my two favorites for sure. I'm watching my my friends in the group chat talking about the live stream. I'm in a group chat with a bunch of history YouTubers, and they're talking about it right now. All right, where are we at? Would love to see you make a video about the Grant Presidential Library at Mississippi State. Also, a local historian runs the Starkville Civil War Arsenal and offers free tours. Interesting. Yeah, I've never been to that library or to the Starkville Arsenal. That I want to do. I'm going to be traveling less to Europe in the coming year or two, other than on group tours. But I want to do some more stuff here at home. So I'll probably get to more Civil War sites. Would you ever do a how I would vote in every election? I don't know that I would, because, and I appreciate that Matt does that, Mr. Beat. I don't know that I would, because I'm too cognizant of my own biases and too knowledgeable of history, I think. Not that I'm saying that Matt isn't knowledgeable of history, because he is. I just don't think I could get out of my own way enough to do that effectively. because I know too much about how each of those presidents performed in office to feel like I could fairly judge who I would have voted for in those elections. I don't know. Just probably not a thing I would do. Where do you see this Israel, Iran, and America war going? No, it's totally fine, Tanya. This is the time and place to ask that question. I said, ask me anything. So, unfortunately, I don't see the Israel thing. Israel's always going to be at conflict with the nations in that region just by its existence. And I think some of those nations and some of those groups over there have made it clear that until Israel does not exist over there, there will always be conflict. So I think there will always be conflict. For this particular happening, I hope it gets resolved. I think it would be a mistake for Israel or the United States to try and take out the Ayatollah. I think they would very much like to see the people of Iran do that themselves. I'm not sure that'll happen, but I think that's probably the hope for Israel and the United States, is that the people of Iran would rise up and overthrow the government. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, or whether that'll happen, I don't know. I think we've seen plenty of instances where the U.S., for example, has gotten involved in regime change, thinking it was for the best, and actually made things worse. So I'm not going to pretend for a second to know what is the best outcome at all. I mean, we all thought that overthrowing Saddam Hussein was going to benefit the Middle East, and it actually destabilized it more. So who knows? So I don't know. I don't see an end to conflict between Israel and countries around them. I hope that this one doesn't escalate further. How do you get to accuracy when there are so many different perspectives on any event? That's a great point. That's why anytime you're reading a history, you have to ask yourself the question, who's writing this? What are they hoping to accomplish by writing it? What are their biases? What is their perspective? So, for example, if I'm reading about the Gallic Wars, I'm most likely reading about the Gallic Wars from the perspective of Julius Caesar, who wrote down what happened in the Gallic Wars. That means everything I'm looking at has to be seen through the biases of Julius Caesar. What purpose does he have in writing this? What would he lie about? Why would he lie? What is he hoping to accomplish? If you understand the biases, you can read it and still get an understanding, while understanding, you know what? Okay, this battle probably happened largely in the way it's described, but maybe the Romans weren't outnumbered by as much as Julius Caesar says they were. Maybe the situation didn't go down quite the way that it sounds like it did, but it probably happened largely this way. And sometimes we have multiple perspectives, which makes it a lot easier because you have people writing from different sides. And then probably somewhere in the middle is the truth. So just understand who it is you're reading and why they wrote what they did. And do your best to see through the biases. Okay. So Crazy Gamer, I have not done anything on composers. What are my thoughts on the Inquisition? Not a fan. Obviously, anytime you have a religious group trying to use fear of death and use torture and use persecution as a means to establish their faith and to root out what they see as heresy, I'm not a fan of. Very much a fan of freedom of religion, even though I myself am an evangelical Christian and believe very strongly in what I believe. I'm not the kind of person that would ever take the side of someone who says death to anyone who doesn't think like me. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. That's correct. Always loved history, but you've inspired me to learn more about our presidents. I'm currently going through them and their accomplishments and negatives in order. So very cool, Wes. Actually, right now on our Discord, for anybody who's a member or a patron, you get access to our private Discord. And I've got a channel on the Discord server where I'm asking people to upload their own presidential tier rankings. And I'm going to be doing some upcoming videos where I review those. and I talk about what I agree with, what I don't agree with, and just kind of see what other people have to say other than myself. So if you happen to find yourself on the Discord, upload your ranking so we can see what you think. Oh boy, we got a long way to go to get caught up on some stuff here. Christian said, what do I think about PBS? Hope PBS does not get defunded. I agree. And my understanding is I was actually talking to Ken Burns about this, and obviously PBS is where we first learned about the Civil War through Ken Burns. It sounded to me like the way he was describing it, that it was mostly the local stations that were suffering from the potential defunding. So from that standpoint, I hope that doesn't happen. Okay, thoughts on conceptual historians, Reinhard Koselleck, Otto Brunner, etc., and the practice of conceptual history in general. I am a fan of any unique lens through which to view history. I don't think there's any right way to look at history. So I love any kind of history. I love looking at history through the lens of politics, through the lens of religion, through the lens of food. I love looking at alternate history. I love conceptual history. Any of those things. It gives us opportunities to look at historical events and people and places from angles we might not otherwise look at. Okay. Kieran, I thought you haven't heard me answer this before. Why do I hate Robert Walpole? Also, there are ads in the stream. Yes, I know that YouTube runs ads in the stream, and I apologize for that. Hopefully, they're not happening too often because I don't actually see them happen, so I don't know when they happen. I hate Robert Walpole. I don't really hate Robert Walpole. I make a big deal of hating Robert Walpole because I was engaged to a Walpole. I was engaged to my high school sweetheart when I was very young, in my early 20s. And she broke up with me and ended up marrying somebody else. And she was a Walpole. Her last name was Walpole. And when I did her family history, discovered she was a direct descendant of Robert Walpole. He's like her 10th or 11th great grandfather. So I make a big deal anytime he's mentioned to kind of hate on him, but I don't really hate him. Big Dog, thank you for that. Do I think that the long run French Revolution was a good thing? Yeah, I do think that, although it certainly led to a lot of bad things first before it became good. So it's all connected, right? I mean, without the French Revolution, or without the American Revolution, there's probably no French Revolution, at least not the way it happened. Without the French Revolution, there's no Napoleonic Wars. There's no Napoleonic Wars. We don't get all the events that come after. So, do I think NASA as an independent government agency is still necessary for space travel? I mean, they do still seem to have a role to play. And I think they're using a lot of SpaceX and Blue Origin's stuff, right? I don't know. That's a great question. I tend to lean on the side of private industry versus government. So if I had to choose one or the other, I would say I'd rather see the private part, but I can see a partnership working. I guess we'll see what that looks like. Did I expect the U.S. bombing Iran? And your thought? I'm not surprised it happened. I'm surprised it happened as quickly as it did. I thought it would be longer. I thought that the U.S. would give more time for Iran to possibly come to the negotiating table. Maybe it was made clear to the U.S. that Iran had no interest in doing that. I don't know. So I wasn't totally surprised. I was just surprised by the timing. I will say this, for all of the criticisms that one can levy at the Trump administration, and there are many. I am one who will criticize an administration when I feel they deserve to be criticized, and I am one who will praise an administration for things that can be praised. There were plenty of times I criticized Obama, and there were plenty of things I praised him for as well. I thought the way he handled Osama bin Laden was wonderful. I thought he handled that. I thought he took a risk, and it was a risk that was worth taking, and I give him all the credit in the world for that. I think some of the times he responded to some negative things and tragedies that happened in the United States, I thought he brilliantly handled those things. There are other things I was critical of him. So with the Trump administration, I'll say this: the fact that we didn't know a darn thing about this going down until hours after it had already happened, that's good, especially given some past history, recent history with leaks. The fact they pulled this off without, the first news we knew that this strike had happened came from President Trump posting on social media about it. Nobody knew anything about it before that. And I was flipping back and forth last night between CNN and Fox News. I like to hear the different perspectives. And on Fox News, I think it was Jennifer Griffin she said in 18 years of working at the Pentagon, that was the first time she had ever been caught that much by surprise, that she'd ever seen that much lockdown on an event that was unfolding. So I give them credit for no leaks happening for that. Okay. Always thankful for your introducing genealogy to me, and I found connections to 3 brothers who were at the Alamo. Christian, that's very cool. Wow. Any resources you'd recommend for research in Mexico? Yeah, familysearch.org. It's the Mormon Church's resource. It's not the most user-friendly in the world compared to something like Ancestry, but they've got a lot of fantastic records for Mexico. I've done a lot of Mexican research myself for my stepdad. My stepdad is mostly of Mexican heritage, and so I've done a lot of research into his family in Sonora, which is just across the border from where he lives in Arizona. So yeah, familysearch.org is a great place for that. Great version of Battle Hymn of the Republic by the Pennsylvania Mud Turtles. Interesting. I'll check that out. My favorite version that I've heard so far is actually by the same guy who does God Bless the USA, Lee Greenwood. I love his version of Battle Hymn of the Republic. 23andMe or Ancestry, Paraso says. Depends on what you want to do with it. If you're looking to use genealogy as a way to, or DNA as a way to research your family history and to find connections and to break through brick walls, Ancestry is the best way to go. If you're looking for more like finding out about your own DNA and what it means for you health-wise and different things like that, maybe 23andMe, though Ancestry has a lot of that stuff now too. Am I on WikiTree for genealogy? I think I am, but it's been a while since I've looked at it, so I'm not entirely sure. I'm looking at a few of the other things in the chat here. Do I have an NFL team? Yeah, I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. Yeah. Lucky me, right? Thoughts on the New York City mayoral race? I don't even know who's running. Is Cuomo one of the people that's running? Listen, as informed as I like to be, I do not watch news, the TV news, unless like last night when I saw on social media that the attack had happened on Iran, I turned on the news. Otherwise, I don't watch it. So I don't really stay up to date on day-to-day stuff. I go to a few websites and look at the headlines, but I don't follow a lot, really. Who do I got in Game 7? It's in Oklahoma City. I think the Thunder are going to pull it out. Although I wouldn't mind seeing the Pacers win just so I could say that the Pacers knocked my team out and then became the champs. Paul Webb, going to Shiloh in a few weeks. Any hidden or less known spots I'd recommend? Check out the Indian burial mounds that are on the battlefield. Not a lot of people know about those. There's quite a few Confederate burial trenches that are marked that you can find around the battlefield. Those are good. And then go down to Corinth. Corinth is only 20 minutes or a half hour away. Check out some of the historic sites in Corinth. I believe you previously mentioned I am not a Calvinist. No, I'm definitely not a Calvinist. I disagree strongly with some of the viewpoints of Calvinists. I'm in no way, shape, or form believe in the idea of predestination. Thoughts on Redeemed Zoomers Reconquista. I haven't watched that one, but I do plan to check out more of Redeemed Zoomers videos at some point. What do I think of Shadur Sanders' speeding ticket? I think it was the typical thing that you see from a young person who has a lot of money suddenly and feels indestructible like a lot of us did when we were young. I hope he can be a little more responsible moving forward. I'm going to cover SCOTUS rulings. It's not an area of expertise for me. I leave that more to my friend Matt Beat, who is much more skilled in those things than I am. A big history buff. I was wondering, is there a subject in history that I really don't know about? I would say some of the biggest holes in my history knowledge would be Eastern Asia, like Japan, Korea, China, even Indian history, despite what the website says about me, Sam Nixon, popular Indian history YouTuber. So I would say that I don't know a lot about the history of Africa other than Egypt and the rest of Africa really prior to European settlement of those areas. I don't know a lot, unfortunately. Okay. Love your content, especially reactions to Ben Shapiro's clips. Both of you seem to know your stuff. Would you ever collab with him? Yeah. I mean, Ben Shapiro is like way out of my league as far as fame. So I doubt he'd ever collab with a little fish like myself, but I certainly would. He's an incredibly intelligent guy. I don't always agree with him, but I think he's sincere. I think he's principled. And I think he's really intelligent. And I find him to be, like I said, I think he's a good person who has very strong beliefs that a lot of people strongly disagree with, and that's okay. But yeah, I'd love to talk with him about history. Do I think executive power should be reformed? I do think that of the three branches of government, the legislative branch is the one who has kind of had its power eroded the most compared to the other two. Supreme Court with Marbury versus Madison and ever since kind of gave itself a lot more power by giving itself the power of judicial review, which wasn't specifically spelled out in the Constitution. And likewise, the presidents have been eroding away and taking a little bit more executive power all the time, especially the way we see executive orders being used more and more as a way to bypass other branches of government. So I feel like, if anything, we need a rebalance where the legislative branch gets its power back and the other two branches don't have quite so much power. Would I do a collab with Atten Shea? Absolutely. If he ever wanted to collab with me. Listen, I'm not the kind of person who goes out of his way to set up collaborations. It's just not my nature. So 95% of the time when you see me doing a collaboration, it's because that other person reached out to me about collaborating. It's not that I don't want to. It's just that I'm not a delegator and I'm not a outside the box thinker, really. So I tend to kind of just do everything myself. So yeah, but I mean, if somebody like that reached out to me, Atten Shea, I absolutely would do that. All right, where are we at? Let's see. Do you think nuclear weapons have made this world a more peaceful place? It's hard to say, but I have heard that argument made, and I suppose one could make that argument. I'm very grateful they haven't been used since World War II. I hope that continues. I wish nobody had them. I wish they didn't exist. I wish they just all were gone and we never had to think about that again. But that's not the world we live in. Okay. Do I think political parties just evolve to win the White House? Not just the White House, but I do think that political parties, that their number one priority is staying in power. I don't think they start that way. I don't think the Republican Party, when it was formed in the 1850s, was started to gain power. It was started out of principles, the principle of stopping the expansion of slavery. It evolved into like any political party, a force that got power and wanted to keep that power. Same with the Democrats. It's an unfortunate reality. Do you think an interest in history reflects something psychologically, like how people say athletic runners are running from their past? I'm not a psychologist, so that's really out of my area of expertise to judge. I think there are all sorts of reasons why people get into history that may or may not have to do with those things. I think that's probably true for some people. Wow, we got a long way to go to get caught up on just the super chats, and I'm trying to keep an eye on the rest of the chat too. Hear me out, everyone gets 2, just some dude said. So what I'm going to ask is that if you haven't already done a super chat, that you kind of slow down on the super chat so I can get caught up with all of those. We are going to do another stream in a couple of days. I'm thinking maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. It'll be probably late afternoon. So if you haven't already done a super chat, save it for then, or go over and sign up on Patreon. And then you can join the Discord and you can ask me in the Discord. Now I'll try to answer it there. But I want to be respectful of all the people who have already asked questions and try to get to those before our time runs out, because it's getting really, really warm up here. So I'm not going to go too much longer. We've been going a little over an hour so far. What % chance do you give Trump opening up Cali for an attack? Legit. Like, I feel like it might be non-zero. You mean like California? Nah, I think a lot of that is overblown. I'm not too worried about California being opened up for an attack. Do I have degrees in history? Yes, I studied history in college. That was my major. What makes someone a qualified historian? Simple. Do you love history? Do you learn history? Do you pass on what you've learned to other people? That's the only qualification for being a historian. Has nothing to do with how many books you've written. Has nothing to do with how many degrees you have or what the level of those degrees are. Has nothing to do with what your job is. Historian is, by definition, someone who learns history and then teaches other people what they've learned. Have I ever visited the Franklin battlefield? Not in a really, really long time. And it's a place I want to get back to and do some videos for my channel, Stories of the Civil War, in the near future. Yeah, I want to get back there for sure. Philip, greetings from Lexington, North Carolina. Do you think North Carolina or even South Carolina had a huge impact on the Revolutionary War? So North and South Carolina are really the place that Yorktown was set up. Without the fighting that goes on, and a lot of that fighting was done by militia in North and South Carolina, especially Nathaniel Greene, who I think was the best American general, in the American Revolution. Without the fighting that he does in North and South Carolina against Cornwallis and others, there is no Yorktown. And North and South Carolina were very much a battleground of civil war during the Revolution. I think I've been saying for the last 2 years, but I definitely plan to do it with the anniversary of independence coming up. I want to get down to North and South Carolina and do a whole video series on the Southern campaign of the Revolution. Who would win a fight to the death, a Bengal tiger or a grizzly bear? Ooh, I feel like a tiger probably, but that is my very uneducated opinion on that. Where abroad do I think I would like to live? Scotland. Would absolutely love to live in Scotland. I think my kids would too. They would love to live there. Been watching the video since 2021. Thank you. That is a long time. I appreciate that. Do you think wars will ever return to infantry style combat? I think there will always be a place for troops on boots on the ground, as we say it, but less now than ever because of the ever changing nature of warfare. And we're seeing that a lot of stuff being done with drones, a lot of stuff being done with airstrikes, missiles. From Me Love, all the work you early Islam series. Yeah, Malik, I definitely want to do some more history of early Islam. That's a topic I don't know nearly enough about, and I think it's a super important part of world history that we should take a look at more. I like Night at the Museum. I thought it was entertaining and fun. I haven't watched it for a long time. When my kids were younger, we watched it. Other than Grant, who's your favorite Civil War general? Sherman. And what general do you believe should be well known but isn't? On the Confederate side, Patrick Cleburne. On the Union side, John Gibbon. I love me some John Gibbon. He was a North Carolinian who fought for the North. Thoughts on the increase in domestic terrorism? Trump was shot at last week. Representative Hortman murdered. You found what Trump said. I agree. I was also disgusted by what Trump said in talking to Governor Walz a waste of time. I thought that was completely out of line and had no place, especially under the circumstances. And those are some of the reasons that no matter what I might agree with or not agree with when it comes to Trump, those kind of unforced errors, I think, just he causes a lot of unnecessary harm to himself and to our country as our representative, as our head of state, to do kind of stuff like that. I thought that was out of line, and I don't think that helps any. And I think that we see a lot of that from people in government all the time. It's not just Trump. Trump is just the most prominent and probably the most guilty of anybody when it comes to that kind of stuff. Let's see. Hypothetical for you. If the Treaty of Versailles wasn't so one-sided, and if Germany wasn't treated as harshly, do you think that would have impacted the overall landscape of Europe after World War I? Yeah, and I hate to say it, but I honestly think that if they had listened more to Woodrow Wilson, I threw up in my mouth just saying that. And Woodrow Wilson is to blame for why they didn't listen to him, because he was his own worst enemy, a lot like Trump is. I think things could have been better. I do think that Versailles, while not the only factor, was a significant contributing factor to the creating the circumstances in which the Nazi Party could rise in Germany. It wasn't the only factor, but it was a factor for sure. I just saw somebody say over on the side, who do I believe was a better general, Grant or Lee? Definitely Grant. Lee was a good tactician, not a great strategist. Grant was a brilliant strategist. Which video unexpectedly blew up for you? It was the reaction to Ben Shapiro's presidential tier list. It is my most viewed video, and it didn't happen right away. It actually took like a week or two before it blew up. It was crazy. There was another comment or question that somebody asked that I was going to respond to, and I don't see it now. Maybe it was one of the super chats, and that's why I just haven't gotten to it yet. If the U.S. had to move the capital from Washington to somewhere else, where do I think it should go? If we were trying to make it more central, St. Louis would be good. Maybe Kansas City, somewhere in that area. I think it would be a good spot for it. All right, like I said, let's try not to do any more super chats. Save them for the next live stream that'll be in a few days. I talked about my opinion on the U.S. bombing Iran at the beginning, so if you want to go back and watch the stream live later, the whole stream will be up later. You can go back and watch that. Do I like the Harry Potter franchise? I do, very much. My daughter is a huge fan of Harry Potter. She has a TikTok that's very popular that she does a lot of talking about Harry Potter on her TikTok. It's Rachel Joy 356. The 356 from Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, which is her favorite Bible verse. Am I neurodivergent? That was the question from Baguette. I don't know a lot about that, but my daughter, who is, says that I definitely am. I'm fairly certain I have ADHD. Looking back on my life and even looking at my present life, I would say that I would probably be diagnosed with that. I've had people ask me whether or not I'm on the autism spectrum. Again, don't know enough about it, but I guess maybe, possibly. But yeah, I would say I'm probably neurodivergent. It explains a lot. All right, where are we at? Did you know that James Doohan, the actor who played Scotty, served in the Canadian Army? Yeah, I actually talked about that in the video I did about Canada a week or two ago, where we talked about why Canadians are like psychos in wartime. I forget the exact title, but I mentioned that in there. Yeah, and you can actually see it in a couple of the Star Trek scenes where you can see his missing fingers. Yeah, he landed on D-Day at Juno Beach. Cambrian Chronicles, definitely a channel I want to check out. I subscribe to them, but I haven't watched any of their videos yet because I'll probably react at some point, and I want to do more Welsh history. Have I ever looked into the nuclear testings in Nevada? Not a lot, other than what is it? Well, obviously the Trinity test, and was Castle Bravo? That one wasn't in Nevada, was it? I watched something on that one recently. I know we did a lot of them out on atolls in the Pacific as well, but I'm not real familiar with it. No. Marstar Miller, thank you so much. I am having a great day. I hope you are as well. And Tanya, thank you for becoming a member. Hope to see you over on the Discord server. Love to see Flags of Our Fathers letters from Iwo Jima style double feature about Vicksburg. Ooh, yeah, that would be very cool. One told from the perspective of the Union and one told from the perspective of the Confederates. Very cool. Would love to see that. I have watched the channel Possible History. I just saw somebody ask me about that. Lucas, I do want to go back to the Netherlands. I want to get to what is it? Is it Doorn? Is that where Kaiser Wilhelm, his house? I wanted to visit when I was there the first time, and I was there on King's Day, and it was closed that day. I'm sure you've seen Ken Burns' Civil War. Do you think Shelby Foote was a closeted lost causer? I don't. I think he very much grew up in the lost cause surrounding him, but a true lost causer doesn't say things like the Union was always going to win that war and the South never had a chance to win. No matter what would have happened, the Union was always fighting with one hand tied behind their back. That's not something a lost causer says. Yes, is he coming at it from a more favorable perspective of the South, being from the South? Yeah, absolutely. But I think he had a very realistic view of the nature of the war. Patrick, someone asked me about Grant Early, and I said Grant. What is my denomination? I'm actually not in a denomination. I grew up in what are called independent Christian churches and churches of Christ, which are part of what's called the Restoration Movement. A lot of our churches used to be part of the Disciples of Christ denomination, but broke away from what they saw back in the 50s and 60s as being a lean towards liberalism. So basically what it means is there are a whole bunch of churches. If we were a denomination, we'd be one of the largest denominations in the U.S. Because we have our own universities like Kentucky Christian University in Grayson, Kentucky, Ozark Christian College. There's Lee University in Tennessee. We have our own publications, all that sort of stuff. We have our own church camps, but there's no governmental or denominational authority above the local church. But there are a lot of churches with a common set of beliefs. In terms of doctrine, I suppose we would be closest to Baptist, but not Calvinist the way that Southern Baptists are, for example. Yeah, so am I going to do more Jack Rackham? Yeah, I definitely will do some more Jack Rackham. And I also heard that Blue Jays got another video out, so we'll do that at some point. Let's see. You said before that you believe Washington was not the best general. Some things I believe make him a decent general. Oh, he was a great leader, phenomenal leader, and he knew how to find the right people to put people in positions of authority to succeed. He's responsible for Nathaniel Greene. He's responsible for Alexander Hamilton, people like that. He could see greatness in people even before they saw it in themselves. He knew how to keep the army together. He had a personal charisma that I think no other general had. And I'm not sure any other general could have held the Continental Army together the way that he did. And Trenton was absolutely brilliant. And it went against most of his more experienced generals' opinions to do that. So Trenton was brilliant. Monmouth was a brilliant battle. At least it should have been. It could have been a lot better if he had his way. But he had some great strengths that a more traditional army commander who might have been a better tactician on the battlefield might not have had. He was who we needed when we needed it. Okay. What's worse, an escalated ground war in Iran involving the U.S. or a civil war in Iran that could make the Middle East like the Balkans? A ground war in Iran involving the U.S. I think is far worse, because I think that could involve other people. Better Iran goes into civil war themselves, and I hope that doesn't happen either, than outside forces get involved. That's a no-win scenario. I don't want to see the U.S. putting troops on the ground anywhere in the Middle East. Okay. Thoughts on Orthodox icons as a pastor? I get wary of icons myself, but I also confess I don't fully understand them. I wouldn't go so far as to say that it's idolatry, because I don't think that Orthodox themselves view it as idolatry. And I have a friend who is Orthodox, and I think he has a very grounded and biblical view of Christianity. So I guess I would say I don't understand it enough to have a proper view on it. But of course, I'm leery of it just because of the potential for idolatry. But idolatry can happen in a lot of ways. Money can be an idol. There are a lot of evangelical churches who have put their pastors and their leaders in positions of idols, I think. And I think that's super dangerous. We have 13, you only have 2. Jesus never condemned idols. He didn't have to. The Bible loudly condemns idols. You have no graven images. You'll have no other gods before me. And Jesus never said he came to supersede the Old Testament. He said, I have not come to eliminate one word of the law, but to fulfill it. There are lots of apostolic churches in the USA, Ruan. Most of my paternal side of my family are apostolic. All right, let's get caught up on the last of these, and then we're going to wrap it up. And I'm just going to ask once again that let's not do any more super chats. At this point, I can't promise I will get to your super chat if you put one in, and I don't want people putting in a super chat and then being disappointed because I didn't answer it. Majid is another word for mosque. Okay, thank you for that explanation. Saying the opinions on Muslims in America aren't monolithic. That's true, and I think that's probably true everywhere, right? My experience, my personal experiences with Muslims has only been positive. The Muslims that I have encountered and that I've gotten to know in my life have been warm, generous, funny, wonderful people. And likewise, the vast majority of Christians I know are warm, generous, funny, loving, kind, non-judgmental people who understand their own weaknesses as human beings. Unfortunately, for Muslims, for Christians, for atheists, for Buddhists, for pretty much any people group, for Democrats and Republicans, most of us judge groups we don't understand by their loudest adherents on social media. So a lot of people tend to judge Muslims based on the 19 that flew planes into buildings on 9/11. That's not most Muslims. A lot of people view Christians based on the Westboro Baptist Church or the people standing out in front of an abortion clinic protesting and screaming in people's faces. That's not who most Christians are. A lot of people on the conservative side of things think that every liberal is a vagina hat wearing person who screams and cries because Donald Trump got elected. And there's a lot like that, but that's not everybody. Just get to know people for yourself. Get outside your own echo chamber and talk to people who are different than you. And you might be surprised. The number of times people have talked to me and said, wow, you're nothing like I expected a Christian to be. And I was shocked because I'm like most Christians that I know. almost all the Christians I know are like me. But I found out that people had judged Christians by what they saw from the worst of us on social media or on TV. And that's not who most of us are. All right, let me try to get through the last of these. I'm going to try to go fast here. Have I ever made my way to Montgomery, Alabama? No, I definitely want to go, and I have a couple of reasons why I want to go. I have a friend I've been doing research for on family history whose family comes primarily from Montgomery, and I've been learning a lot about that part of the world lately. It's becoming very well known in the British Isles. Yeah, I love the UK. Have I thought about doing more reactions about the British Isles, the 7 Years' War, Civil War? I did a whole series on the Civil War, and some of my ancestors were prominent parts of the Civil War, including one of the regicides that signed the death warrant for Charles I, and he was a lieutenant general in the Cromwell army. But yeah, I definitely will do more. John Burns, thank you. History Bites is 90s Canadian TV made by some people who made the Red Green Show. Posted the Uncivil War in your Discord. I will check that out, John. Thank you. Dave Davis, and what, in your opinion, what's the difference between regime change and unconditional surrender? I suppose unconditional surrender could be the existing regime keeps power but goes along with what's being demanded of it, I guess. What are my thoughts on the Orthodox faith? I don't fully know the Orthodox faith, but there's nothing in the Orthodox faith that would cause me to say those people aren't real Christians. Absolutely are. I consider Orthodox Christians to be my brothers and sisters in Christ. And I think that's all that matters. When am I running for office? Probably never. But I appreciate that. And thank you, Blake. I appreciate that. Thank you, Soviet Snake. P Ridge, yes, very high on my list. It's one of the most prominent battles I haven't been to yet. I'm just looking at the live chat here as well. Do I think there's a possibility Oswald Mosley could have taken power in the UK? That's always possible. I think a lot of things aren't possible until they happen. I never thought it was possible Donald Trump would win the Republican nomination. And when he won the Republican nomination in 2016, I didn't think it was possible he would be elected. And he was. Just which goes to show you that in the right circumstances, with the right electorate at the right time in the right part of the world, anything's possible. Have I ever voted Democrat for president? No, I have not. I have not always voted Republican either, though. I'll tell you who I voted for in every election. 96, I voted for Perot. 2000 and 2004, I voted for George W. Bush. 2008, I voted for McCain. 2012, I voted for Romney. 2016, I did not vote in the general election. I voted for Kasich in the primary. 2020, I did not vote for president. 2024, I voted for Nikki Haley in the primary and did not vote for president. I have voted for Democrat for local elections, though, just never for president. Do you agree with the perception that Canadian troops were particularly brutal during World War I? Yes. Not just brutal, but effective. I think they were very effective soldiers who were asked to do a lot of the toughest jobs at the toughest points. And they also had very effective leadership. Arthur Curry was one of the best generals on the Western Front. How do you get on the Discord server? You just join as a member or a patron at any level, even like a couple bucks a month. We'll get you the link. And I hate putting things behind a paywall like that. But number one, we needed to have something that was unique and a thank you to the people who support the channel financially. But also, the last time we had a public Discord server, it got out of control. We didn't have the people we needed to moderate it. And I couldn't, it was taking so much of my time just dealing with complaints about the moderators that I finally just said, we're shutting it down. I'm not doing it anymore. And so then what happened was a couple of our mods from the former channel started a new one on their own. And then we decided amongst us that we would do it on a limited basis. And it's actually been really, really effective to do it that way, to not make it public. We've not had a lot of issues. In fact, it's gone very smoothly, and it's been a wonderful experience. The Inquisition was scheduled at least 30 days, so I guess people did expect it, huh? Am I coming to Belgium again? Yes, definitely going to be coming back to Belgium. I love Belgium. Belgium's one of my favorite countries in Europe that I've been to. It's got amazing history. It's got some of the most important battlefields in European history. Obviously, you've got Waterloo there, and you've got World War I and World War II battlefields that are super important. A lot of great history. What legacy do you plan on leaving? Fantastic question. As much as I love being known as vlogging through history, this is Scottish Mad Lad. I think I did mention, I'm sorry, I'll get back to the legacy thing in a second. You said I said I voted for Bill Clinton. I did mistakenly say that once, and then I corrected myself in the very next video. So yeah, I did mention voting for Bill Clinton. And then when I went back and looked at the 96 election, I was like, wait a second. No, I thought about voting for Clinton, but I actually voted for Ross Perot in that election. Anyway, what legacy do I plan on leaving? To me, here's my priorities. Child of God, Christian, number one. Father. Everything else way down here. My most important legacy that I leave is a legacy of my faith, that I was somebody who lived up to my calling as a Christian. And I don't mean that as somebody who like changed the world, but just that I lived my faith. And what does that mean? Well, Jesus said that the two greatest commandments were to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. If I don't get that right, loving God and loving people, nothing else matters. And if I don't get right my role as a dad and raise my kids to be productive members of society who also love God and love people, and they don't have to think the way I do. My daughter and I view politics very differently, but I love her and I'm proud of her. And she's educated on the issues, so she doesn't have to think like me. And same thing with faith. I don't want my kids to be Christians because I'm a Christian. I want them to make that choice for themselves, and they all have made that choice for themselves. And I want them to continue to make their faith their own. So that's my legacy. That's all that matters. Everything else is secondary to that. Okay. Would love to see Jack the Ripper content. Yeah, you know what? I'm actually planning next time I get to London to I'm working on a video series for Jack the Ripper. Least favorite alternate history timeline. Ones that involve the South winning the Civil War, because I can't think of a plausible scenario where that happens. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Adrian. Would you rate historical knowledge about Mesoamerica? Not great. Pre-Columbian history in America for me is very poor and something I need to know more about. Yes, it is something I'd like to dive more into. I was just in Mexico. Lots of incredible history down there related to Mesoamerica. Who wins, Napoleon or Grant? All things being equal, Napoleon. And I would say that about Napoleon versus probably just about anybody. Who was the first liberal country, America or France? England? Not America or France. I would say it's England. Do I follow football clubs outside of the UK like the Netherlands? Not a lot. I'm aware of some of the clubs. I've got a friend who's a big fan of Feyenoord and has them tattooed on his arm. But a little bit here. I watch some of La Liga and the French league. I watch the Bundesliga some. What are my memories of O.J. Simpson? Oh gosh, yeah. I did watch the Bronco Chase live. I did watch the Verdict live. I'll tell you my memory of the Verdict. So I was in college, and I was an athlete in college, and I was actually on a floor in our dorm that was mostly athletes. And I remember I think it was the middle of the afternoon in Pennsylvania where I was going to school. And I remember the minute the verdict got read, that half our floor was like, oh, and half the floor was in the hallway celebrating. And it was mostly the black athletes on our floor that were celebrating. That was a very racially divisive verdict. I think a lot of African Americans praised it. A lot of other Americans did not. And you have to understand the context of that. This is the context of things like Rodney King and a lot of other stuff that was going on in America, where there was a view by a lot of people that it was a racially motivated trial. I think in hindsight now, most people would agree O.J. Simpson was almost certainly guilty. But at the time, that's kind of how I remember it. It was very divisive racially. All right, I'm going to try to get through the last of these here. Craig, thank you for that. Spoke about the secrecy of the Iran attack. It was revealed by the Pentagon Pizza Index. I heard about that. I do know what that is. And having been in the Pentagon now, I understand that. So for those who don't know, the Pentagon is very much its own self-contained city. I got to tour the Pentagon a few months ago. Who's beeping outside my house? So I got to tour the Pentagon a few months ago, and they have like a flower shop. They have jewelry stores. They have an AT&T store. They've got a whole shopping mall in there. They've got fast food places. They've got enough food and supplies that they could shut the whole thing down with 15,000 people inside of it and live there for 3 months without ever having to leave. Fascinating place. And yeah, so I've heard about the pizza index where you can tell by people's habits with Pizza Hut and stuff like that in the Pentagon, whether or not something big is going down. Okay. Just got here. What are your thoughts on what's happening in LA? On one hand, and I know this is going to make it sound like I am taking the middle of the road, but that's not the case. I do agree that much more needed to be done about the problem of illegal immigration in this country. I'm not a fan of how it's being done. I think there are ways to do it. I feel like we're taking a flamethrower to an issue that needs a scalpel. I think we need to be a lot less kidnappy in how it's being done, I guess. So I understand people's reactions, but I also understand that none of this stuff takes place in a vacuum. And it tends to be that when you see extreme actions being taken, it's usually because it's a reaction to something on the other side. It's not to blame the other side, but it's to understand that it's a reaction. Adolf Hitler and the rise of fascism in Germany happened because of the events that created the circumstances that allowed that extremist position. And people who might not have otherwise sided with a psycho because they thought nobody else was doing anything about this issue they thought was important to them. And so I think a lot of people are supporting what I think are very heavy-handed actions that do make it look like the work of a tyrant, because they feel like nothing was done for so long that they're just glad something's finally being done. Unfortunately, that's, I think, why so many people are supporting it. So on one hand, I think it's important that we do deal with our illegal immigration issue that we have in this country. I also don't think that the way it's being done is the way to do it. I confess I don't have a good answer for how it should be done. Give your tier list of Cleveland sports teams. Okay, if I'm going to include Buckeye football on the list, they're obviously at the top. So I go Buckeye football, Guardians, Indians. They may end up the Indians again at some point. Cavs, Browns, at least right now. Although the Cavs are obviously the better team, I think the Indians are the better run organization. Guardians. Have I viewed the mini Statue of Liberty on the Susquehanna? Yeah. I used to be a part of a denomination that I was a pastor in. And I was at a church in Western Pennsylvania, but our annual denominational meetings were held outside of Hershey, Pennsylvania. And so we would always drive through Harrisburg on the way there. So yeah, I'm very familiar with the Statue of Liberty. that's in the middle of the Susquehanna River, which you can kind of walk out to because the Susquehanna is such a shallow river. Love to research your family history, your biological father's side. Despite being Filipino-American, your last name is Germanic. Yeah, same here. I have very little Germanic ancestry, but my last name was originally German. It was Maurer, which is like bricklayer. Would I revisit the fallen of World War I and World War II previously covered? Yeah, actually going to be another one. I'm working on a fallen of World War I, specifically Germans. I'm going to be doing a bunch of German stories from the Somme when I go back in September. I've got a bunch of part of my collection, and I'm actually going to be doing some videos this week. I'm going to be shooting some videos of some of my collection to go up on my Stories of the Great War channel, showing some of my personal collection. And I'm going to show you some of my, I have funeral cards for a whole bunch of German soldiers, including a couple that died on the Somme. And I'm going to be taking those with me and telling their stories. All right, let's finish up these super chats, and then we're going to wrap it up. Can I rank the 50 state capitol buildings? Ooh, that's a good idea. I like that idea at some point to do that. As a fellow Browns fan, is it possible that one team could draft so poorly over such a long period with so many different GMs? Yeah. We've nailed a couple picks, but missed on a lot of others. Your sixth great-grandfather was one of the signers of the Declaration from South Carolina. I have not read much about him. No, unfortunately, I don't know a lot. Bailey, any small mistakes I think could lead to big consequences, but didn't. Yeah, Robert E. Lee, his orders for the Antietam campaign should have led to far bigger consequences than they did. His army should have been destroyed, but wasn't. That's the first thing that comes to mind. I'm sure there are others as well. Yeah, I was supposed to go to Appomattox in April for the anniversary, and then I got so busy with other things that unfortunately just couldn't fit it into my schedule. But I do definitely want to still get there. Most underrated Roman emperor, Domitian? Maybe. I'm not a fan of Domitian. I think I would say Trajan, and I know Trajan is highly regarded by historians who study the Roman Empire, but I think by and large, the average person who only could name 3 or 4 Roman emperors isn't going to name Trajan. And I think Trajan's one of the most important. Professor What, any update on you and JD getting to Vicksburg? That's a great question. I haven't talked to JD about that for a while. I want to get there, and I want to get him there for sure. Not sure if I'm aware that Metatron has expressed interest in collaborating. Yeah, he and I have talked back and forth on X a little bit. It'll happen at some point. He and I have so much in common. We just got to find the right idea. So if anybody has any suggestions, let us know. But I will definitely collab with Metatron at some point. I'm a big fan of his channel. What is my opinion on the non-canon gospels? I'm intrigued, and I've read some of them. Could they be accurate and could they be real? Absolutely. Are they? Hard to say. Hamilton or Jefferson, who would approve of today's government? More likely Hamilton. Much, much stronger central government than we've ever had. And that would certainly favor Hamilton. Live about 10 minutes from a star fort in 96. Very cool. Love star forts. I've been to a few. All right, let's wrap these up here, and then I'm going to finish up the stream, but we will be streaming again this week. Thoughts on Robin Williams? I love Robin Williams as Theodore Roosevelt. I thought he was great, but my favorite portrayal of Theodore Roosevelt would be oh gosh, he played Longstreet in Gettysburg, and I'm drawing a blank on his name all of a sudden. I've met him. I should remember who he is. Somebody will say it in the chat as soon as you guys get caught up with the chat. He was Longstreet in Gettysburg. I'm just waiting for the chat. Tom Berenger, thank you very much. Tom Berenger was phenomenal as Theodore Roosevelt. Had the voice down and the mannerisms perfectly. Overrated and underrated presidents. Most overrated president, Franklin Roosevelt. Most underrated president, James Polk. He had a huge interest in history before entering college, but most people I knew told me that there's not much money in it. Well, I mean, yeah, YouTube is the first time I've made any money in history, despite majoring in history in college. So yeah, absolutely right. That's why I tell people who are majoring in history, have a plan for what you're going to do with that degree. If you're going to teach, if you're going to try to get a job in a museum or doing research or working for some organization, but understand that it's not a lucrative degree to have compared to like being an engineer or something. Who are your favorite post-World War II US, UK, German, and French leaders? Reagan, Thatcher, Adenauer, and Mitterrand. Let's see. I would say Reagan. UK. Honestly, I'm not sure if I have one for the UK off the top of my head. I don't mind Tony Blair all that much. German, I don't know enough about them to be able to pick one, and I would agree on Francois Mitterrand for the French. Scotty Scott, thank you for that. Brady, thank you for the super sticker. Let's finish up these last few. From a creator who's trying to spread the love of history, what sort of danger lies in AI being the primary source for students? There's a lot of danger, especially because AI is improving all the time, and it's going to get much, much harder to tell the difference. And that's why sources will become super important. I did the video recently on the channel that is trying to portray AI recordings as being real. And the way that you find out the truth about that is you ask, hey, where'd you get this recording? And will you share with us how you got it and let us hear the original? And when they say no to those, and it also sounds like it's AI, well, there's your answer. So if you ask the right questions, you'll find out the right answers. I think there's a place and a way for AI to be used effectively, but portraying stuff as being real when it's clearly not is not the way. Thoughts on President Zelensky? Not perfect, but I think he is doing what his country needs him to do at this time. I think he's the right leader for that country at that time. Beyond that, I couldn't say. I don't know anything about his domestic politics. I only know what I see about how he's standing up to Russia, and that I support. Alex, thank you. Will there be another Napoleon again in history? Never say never until it happens, right? There's always the possibility of that. Agree or disagree on the idea that everyone who fought for the Confederacy were awful people who deserve to be forgotten? Completely disagree. Never lump everybody into one basket. Were there awful people who deserve to be forgotten fighting for the Confederacy? Yeah. There were also some fighting for the Union. Were there honorable people who fought for the Confederacy for a whole lot of reasons that had nothing to do with slavery? Also, yes. Were there people in the Union who decided they didn't want to fight for the Union anymore as soon as the war became about slavery? Also, yes. So I would say disagree. Never lump everybody in one group. Should a historian make a moral judgment to a historical figure with modern sensibilities? Not always, but there are times and places to do that. I think we should be really careful of that. And I think it's super important that we understand people in the context of their times. Well, we can also say, you know what? That viewpoint, while it may have been popular at the time, kind of makes that person in modern times a lousy human being. It can be true. Favorite country flag on each continent. All right. Favorite country flag. I think in North America, I love Mexico's flag. It's great. South America, Argentina. In Europe, it would be Estonia. I love the color scheme of Estonia's flag. In Africa, let me think about that one. So, you know what? Wales. Good point. All right. I love Estonia's flag, but Wales is a pretty epic flag too. It's hard to get away from having a dragon on your flag as being awesome. That is definitely awesome. Yeah, Wales is pretty epic. I do like blue. Mozambique's got a pretty solid flag. A lot of people saying, is it Seychelles? Is that how it's pronounced? Seychelles? A lot of people saying that for Africa. Asia. I like the symbolism of Japan's flag. So I'll go with that. Can you see nationalities of the people watching your videos? Not on an individual basis, but I can see trends. So I can see like what percentage of my viewing audience comes from the US, comes from the UK, comes from Russia, comes from Argentina, etc. But I can't see each individual's nationality. Marstar Miller, thank you for being a member. Video on my opinions about early church fathers or the idea of sola scriptura versus tradition. Yes, probably on VTH Extra, which I definitely need to do more content for in the near future. State House of Pennsylvania is beautiful. So is West Virginia. West Virginia's is very beautiful. Thoughts on the Enlightenment? Some really brilliant people whose ideas I don't always agree with. Quick collapse of France exploded Hitler's ego to authorize the Russian invasion. Yeah, I think that certainly contributed to it, but I think it was inevitable. I think he was always going to go after Russia. It was part of his ideology. He hated Jews and he hated Bolsheviks equally. So it was inevitable, but it may have sped up the timeline. Any Texas war sites? I've never been to any. Need to get to some. San Jacinto, the USS Texas, I definitely want to visit. I've been to the Alamo. It's a little underwhelming. But that's about it. So, all right, I'm going to wrap it up, guys. Thank you to everybody who asked questions. My apologies if you got to a question I didn't get to. I will be doing another live stream sometime later this week. So thank you, and we'll see you again soon. Everybody take care.